Okay. So today's weekly call, I wanted to open it up to everybody because just in my own personal life, this last couple weeks has been uh, challenging and fun and everything in between. So I thought it was kind of a good, not just parenting uh, check-in, but kind of just life in general check-in. Um, so the last 2 weeks for me have been I had a friend die. I had a wedding that same week for a family member that was out of town. So we went immediately from, you know, the death news to the wedding, and it was just like this, right? I had a lot of business changes. We had an 80th birthday party for my dad, and all the out of town companies stayed at our house. Anyways, this is over the last 2 weeks, so it's just a lot. And last week, I started noticing I was really emotional. I was, kind of weepy and irritable a little bit. And I was like, well, maybe I'm pregnant. And I just felt myself pushing through, doing all the mom stuff and doing all the mom stuff and being irritable at the same time. And, I started getting more snappy, really just wanted to go in my room and shut down and not deal with life. But what really hit me yesterday was my husband asked me, how did you sleep? And, Saturday night, I did have a pretty good night's sleep. However, he said, oh, you slept good. You're going to have a lot of energy today. And I was instantly offended and I started getting angry. I'm like, I started my period today. I slept good, and then I started telling him all these things that had happened in the last 2 weeks. And as I'm telling him these things of why my life is so bad right now, it kind of dinged in my head like, oh, story, this is a story time. Um, and so just that little ding of, oh, this is my story was enough for me to be like, okay, back up, take a couple steps back and just sit with that story for a bit. You know, allow it to be there because yes, all of those ups and downs were, real life experiences and emotions and things that I kind of just realized I kind of rushed through and I didn't allow myself to sit with each emotion of each experience. Like the death of my friend. She was terminally ill. So, we were kind of expecting it, but when it happened, it was still a little unexpected. But with the wedding coming up out of town, it was my nephew, so I was helping with that. So her death was like, oh shoot, she died, shed a few tears, but quick, let's move to the next thing. And then it was the wedding, and then it was the, quick move to the birthday party because we have out of town company coming. And it was one thing after the next. And I never allowed myself to just really sit with the story. So then Sunday, when my husband said, oh, you're going to have a lot of energy today, and I started retelling him the story that was going in my head that was running my life at this point. I started listening to my body, and it was just like, you're taking the day off, and we're going to process everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks. And I just had a day off yesterday. Did whatever my body was telling me to do, and it told me to eat 3 different desserts, and I did, and I didn't feel guilty about it. Um, but that's kind of what prompted this whole tell a story thing is because everybody has a story. Every parent has a story of what's going on in their life that is making them act in the way they do. And, that in turn makes the kids act the way they do. So I wanted to touch on again that our nervous system isn't responding to, that immediate moment of the spilled milk or that immediate moment of not being able to get out the door as fast as we may want to. It's responding to the story behind that it's, the things that it hasn't processed and all the things that are piling up. It's, that I have to do it all because I'm the parent. I can't rest. I don't have time to process what's going on. And we're just going to keep pushing it off and things just keep piling it on. So then when we get to that point of, like I was yesterday, my husband said, well, you slept well, you must have energy. I kind of exploded a little bit in anger because I wasn't feeling safe. I was overwhelmed and I was just carrying too much. And yeah, just because I got a good night's sleep doesn't mean that I was going to have a lot of energy. So, when we pause And in my programs, the pause is like the key thing. It's the foundation. It's we can pause and see everything underneath what's going on. So that's when we gain the choice to shift from just the automatic reaction to the responding with compassion for ourselves. Um, so that was my story of bringing the story to kind of out in the open to life. But is there anything in your guys' life that symptom wise or behavior mood wise that you're just not quite sure where that's coming in at? I had a client just the other day, massage client coming in and she's like, I'm so stressed out. And she gets on the table and I'm asking her, what's going on in your life that you're so stressed out? And I kid you not, it was like 90 minutes of stuff going on in her life. And every time I would kind of interrupt her and say, give her a powerful question, she'd be like, oh, yeah, but then there's also this going on. Yeah, but then I also have this going on. And she was never able to get to that pause of, looking at things in a different way. And she's my one who comes in, gets her massage, and leaves. So that's something that I think is just a work in progress for her to be able to feel safe relaxing and, feeling safe to slow down, because when you don't feel safe to slow down, you won't. You're just going to keep pushing through, but then you're also going to keep being irritable. You're going to keep having those emotional moments. And reframing your story can be hard when you don't have somebody to kind of help you along. Somebody who kind of understands where you're coming from and can reflect back to you what you're telling them. So that's why I wanted to bring this up today in the check-in call, because if there's anything that you guys want to tell me or want to talk about that just feels like too much in your life that you can't seem to work around, you can't seem to look underneath, then we can, as a group, kind of collectively reflect back to you what is going on and maybe open up another door somewhere in your life or in your story. Oh yeah, go ahead, MJ.
So, it already happened and I went through it. However, I had a friend die as well, and I was very close to him. And I prepared a talk to do at his memorial, and I was very irritable and very sad until I did the talk, and then I was like super happy. But I just
Oh,
didn't know what to do in that moment. It's almost like I told myself a story, you'll be fine after you do the talk. So I'm just wondering, what should I have done so that I could have been happy all the time?
good question. And I'm wondering how much of that talk that you did or that speech, how much feeling did you put into that speech?
All of it.
Yeah. So that speech was your grieving. And once you were able to get that speech out and all of those emotions and all of those feelings out, you may not have been able to be happy and calm up until that point because you didn't express that form of grieving.
And that's true because the people that because I used to work with him and I worked with many people
Mhm.
and I used to be really close to those people. And after I started doing this work, those people don't even are not a part of my life at all. So I wasn't able to express how I felt about him to them. So it was
Yeah.
all just that day. And there was hundreds of people there.
Ooh, wow, good for you.
So yeah. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was just going through an anger reset course that I made, and one of the things that comes up in there is how anger is so easily expressed, but how anger is it's kind of like the cover for everything underneath. Um, and so when my friend passed away, that was one of the emotions that was coming up in those couple days as we were trying to transition to the wedding was so much anger and so much, irritability and frustration at just at the little things at home, like the kids not doing their job, or, I was tripping over shoes in the entryway, and it was just like I would trip over a shoe or step on a toy, and it's like, oh, put your shit away. I'm so upset. And it wasn't about the toy and it wasn't about the shoes. It was the fact that I didn't feel like I had space or time to process that grief that I was dealing with from my friend. And that's when it's just easier to show anger than it is to show the grief. So I actually went in the car before we left for the wedding. I was like, that something has to change, because physically I was starting to feel physical symptoms, and I knew it was from her death. I'm like, I'm going in the car by myself, and I drove around country roads and I screamed and I hollered in the car, just to get some of that out before full shifting into happy wedding mode, because I didn't want to go through a weekend being angry when it was supposed to be a happy event. So I want to really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, hit the fact that your moods aren't weaknesses. As parents, whatever moods you are in, there's kind of a reason for it, and it's the wisdom that your body has to show you, like, hey, there's something here that we can uncover. And again, this isn't just for parents, but I think just in people in general, you're shut down. It's not something wrong with you. Your body is like feeling safe enough to say, hey, we need to rest. So let's go in our room and we're going to shut the door. There's always wisdom under every symptom, every emotion, every behavior. You just have to be willing to look at it from that lens versus the lens of, oh, my child is throwing things, that means he's being bad. And it's not about fixing. It's not about fixing yourself. It's not about fixing your child's behavior, even if they're throwing books across the floor every day or across the room. Just slowing down, just doing that pause to hear what the story is underneath their behavior. My 4-year-old, at the time he was 4, he like just full on destroyer mode. Anytime something didn't go his way, he would rip up the paper. He would scribble as hard as he could. He would throw books across the room. He would, he would throw things, hit things. And at the time, this was before I kind of got into all this stuff, I had no idea what to do. He would trigger me so bad, then I would get upset and I would holler and I would scream and I would try to shut him down, Once we started understanding the nervous system and how our bodies work, we started looking at what is his story. And every time his story is he didn't feel good enough. He had 2 older brothers who he was trying to keep up with all the time. So when he couldn't do something as well as them, he would get really angry, but really under that anger was that grief of, I can't keep up. So working with that and kind of letting him know, when you feel this anger, what else is your body wanting to say? And it was always wanting to say, I'm not as fast as them. I'm not as strong as them. I can't keep up with them. So when you are aware of the fact that there's always a story, and you start working on that with yourself, your kids kind of automatically pick up on that, and they start looking at their own life and their own experiences they're having, and they just actually, it builds really good critical thinking skills because they start not blaming the situation for whatever it is, but they kind of start looking at other things around that situation that may be contributing to it. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
I just wanted to share the story that you opened with reminded me. A friend wasn't able to make it to a get together and saw a video of us having fun, and she just made the comment like, "Oh, you look like you're in a good mood," and I kind of got upset because I had a really hard week.
Yeah.
And it was like they were doing karaoke, and I was dancing and moving, and it was just kind of a socially acceptable way to move my body and like discharge all that energy from the week. And part of me was like, that was not a good mood. I was not in a good mood. But I noticed, I'm like, wait, but she doesn't know all that. And so maybe not necessarily the story in my head, but staying out of the story in other people's heads
Yes.
is kind of my what I'm trying to pay attention to. Because I know why I was there, and I'm sure she was disappointed that she wasn't able to make it because she had been having some medical issues. And so, but I did notice that initial, like, how dare she say that? That's not what that's not a good move. But it was. So it's just interesting to see, like, we can have our own story and our own reality and how it might be perceived by others. And it was just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That brings up another thought I had. When our kids are in a bad mood, my daughter especially, she's 12 going on 21, and she can go from just kind of being her fun, normal self to just flipping a switch, and suddenly you can't talk to her. And it's like, why are you so crabby? What's wrong with you? And then she gets upset. I'm not crabby. And it's just a good reminder that we don't know what's in our kids' head. We don't know what their feelings are. We can't we can't expect that just because we're the parents that we know exactly what's going on in their life, and we know exactly how to deal with them the right way every time. So just having that grace and compassion for them, like, act you're allowed to act this way. If you don't want to talk to me right now, that's fine. I'm not going to force you to talk to me. But at the same time, knowing that, just giving them space when they get that way. Or um, with my husband, when he asked me, you slept well, you must have energy today. And I started getting irritated with him. He was like, hold on, I didn't come at you. I wasn't trying to make you upset. I'm like, okay, I know. But here's why everything is so bad in my life right now. um yeah, just having that compassion for everybody else, because you really can't judge what people are going through in your life. I think it was my mom who always said, unless you can step into somebody else's shoes, um, and live their life, you really can't say anything about how things are going for them. So yeah, Kaylee.
I have so much on my mind, so I'm trying to like condense it down a little bit. But um, I realized something about my oldest son, and like screen time, um, and how I used it for myself as like a regulate, like I'm dysregulated, you're upset, so you're gonna watch the show so I can go have some, time to myself. And so he actually has started to rely on screen time for his own like regulation. And my husband and I were talking about it, and he's like, we agreed about this like before we even had kids, that we didn't want our kids to like be on screens every day. And I'm like, well, you don't understand like how much like I still rely on that, and I'm at a point where I still need it so that I don't become the mom that's yelling like by the afternoon. And I told him I feel like that's worse than me like having him on a screen. But I'm just trying now. I'm trying to like just bring more awareness to like those moments where I feel overwhelmed, because like that's like I am training him to go to something else to feel okay. And so when he can't watch something, he gets really upset. And he screams and he cries and he asks like dozens of times. And so it's just like brought a lot to light for me. So that's just from like being more aware of of the moment. And then also just like, again, just the awareness piece. Like realizing the beliefs, like the underlying beliefs and why I respond in certain ways. Like my husband last night he was going to go to bed and he's like, oh, I'm probably just going to lay in bed and like be on his phone, because he had to plug his phone in because it was almost dead. And so then I'm reading and I'm like, oh, I guess I could go in there with him. I'm gonna get ready for bed super quick and like, you know, maybe he'll want to like snuggle or whatever, like, where my brain was going. And so I like go in there and I have my book and I like turn on my reading light and he's like, oh, you should just stayed out there.
Oh no.
And I was like, instantly, I just got out of bed and I left. And he felt bad, of course, but I like just went back out here. But my initial thought was, I'm not wanted.
Mhm.
And so it's been helpful for me to just realize it's not so much him and like his behavior that's like making me feel a certain way. It's just like triggering those underlying beliefs about myself.
Mhm.
And so that was just another thing that came up. But yeah, it's just been good to like be more objective about like the moment itself. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That reminded me of, the same thing. Like when you're communicating with somebody through text or through email or, some form where you're not actually talking voice to voice or face to face, it's very interesting because you don't know what the context is, like how they're sending something, what their mood is. And so if you read something and it kind of, even though it may seem just very neutral and you get activated in some way, you can, if you're aware of it, you can start to think, oh, okay, why did that activate me? Why did that make me angry? Why did that make me feel like they're, against me in some way? Probably similar to when your husband was like, can you just stay out there? He wasn't meaning it in a, I don't want you way. He was just like, okay, maybe I just need to go to bed or whatever it was. So those are really good times to kind of step back and, find out what the story is of why it was activating to you. Callie, what did you say? Definitely reflected on my own reaction and good practice to be more objective. Yeah. Yeah, and kids have a way of doing that too because they don't always understand sarcasm very well, and sometimes they say things that they don't have the appropriate sarcastic voice, and they say it in just a normal voice, and you're like, are you kidding me? You can't be mean like that. And they were like, Mom, I was being sarcastic. It's like, okay, I got to think back to, why does that activate me so much? But I know this was super short and I don't know if um, you guys have more things to talk about, but yeah, I guess it's the moral of today's check-in was just, when we pause and we can see the story that's underneath, that's when we gain the choice of how we want to react or respond. Yes, MJ, go ahead.
I had something happen a few days ago where I would normally react and I didn't. My husband was in the kitchen and my mother had visited just a few days before that and she had left and he's yelling and screaming in the kitchen, Grandma, why did you do this? And normally I would go in there and say like, what's going on? What happened? And I didn't, but it was so hard not to. And then I thought to myself, well, if he really wants to tell me, he'll tell me what the issue was. And he never told me.
Okay. So how did that feel for you? Like, not, you said it was really hard.
Oh, I cried.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What do you think you were crying for?
Because my mom doesn't deserve that. And she does her best all the time.
Mhm.
So if she does something he doesn't like, it's not because she's doing it to make him angry.
Mhm. Yeah. Did you feel okay about it after?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to kind of stay out of it.
Hmm.
No matter what, if it's your kids fighting or, like in your situation that somebody against an adult, but like it's really hard to not step in and try to correct things, try to make one person feel better, and fix everything. Because
And
often,
when I did do that, it didn't fix anything. It just made more anger.
yep, I was just gonna say, because oftentimes when you kind of get in the middle of things, it just can make things more muddled or or worse. Um, and that's something I've seen with my own kids. It's really hard to just bite your tongue and kind of let them duke it out and, you know, come to an agreement. But usually it works, and that's just one more way to help them grow. And get better at communicating. So yeah, good for you for staying out of it. Morgan, do you have anything that you want to vent or share? You don't have to, but I was just curious. Yeah, let's see. She said, I recently got resentful over no one helping me put away dinner and clean up after. And after pouting, just did it myself. Afterward, I realized I was telling myself the story that no one appreciates me. I needed to appreciate me. Yeah. Yeah, isn't that funny? Like when it comes for my situation, when it comes to household chores and the kids don't do more than what they have, like a weekly chore list. When they don't do more than what their weekly chore list, I'm like, you guys, why are you not helping me out? And I really have to take every day, kind of step back and be like, they have their weekly chores already that they're doing. I don't need them to step in and help me and tell me like, oh, mom, you do so much, so let me help you out, Um, it's so funny how many tiny little stories we tell ourselves throughout the day or the week, and then they just build up, and by the weekend, we're just like, I'm done. So, yeah, just being aware of those. MJ, you look like you're typing. Were you, or otherwise I was just gonna end it. Oh. Callie says, taking that with me this week, observe more objectively the story underneath the reaction, mine or others. Yeah. Do I have a calendar set up? Like a make an appointment calendar kind of thing? Oh, for the weekly jobs. Yeah. No, I just have a whiteboard that just says, entryway and feeding dogs, table, island, dishes. And they just kind of rotate. And it's not perfect, but it's something. So, yeah. It's a work in progress every single day. Something's always having to change, something's, shifting, and it's just pretty much having the compassion and grace for everybody every day. Okay, well, thank you guys for jumping on. I hope it was helpful for you. Oh, if everybody scrolls up at the top of the chat, I dropped the link for the worksheet that you guys can do today. I'll let you get that before I close it. And it should be open to everybody. All right. Thanks for jumping on, guys. Have a good day.